Don't forget our gift cards at RitaYanez.com, and so am I. Under your bed.
Turn on the light! Turn on the light! Turn on the light!
Hi there, Sagittarius. This is your weekly reading for the week of December 7th through 13th. This is a special week for you. You've got a new moon in your sign, so that's a new moon in your solar first house. And of course, if you know your natal astrology, you'd need your birth time to know this to be exact. Look to see what house is Sagittarius and where the new emphasis on starting over, a breath of fresh air, a new momentum, some new exciting possibilities where they are for you. So in this case, when I'm reading it as solar astrology, then you know that, of course, I've put Sagittarius on the ascendant and then read it that way in combination with the cards. So let's proceed, shall we? On Monday, we have the Two of Wands. This is a card that indicates all of that hope and faith and sense of optimism that you should be feeling now, especially because it's a sense of a fresh start, that the changes that you can start implementing now will actually become something, that you can do something with these ideas this time. The only emphasis we have to be careful with is, of course, without knowing which house this is in, I would know that would be for you, is maybe being what's the word I want to use? I don't know if I really want to use the word or the term overly optimistic, but just don't get ahead of yourself. If you pace yourself and you've got that momentum with you, then just keep going and power through whatever the different experiences that you're going to move through while you take this breath of fresh air with the wind in your sails. So just make sure that you use a healthy dose of realism. Okay, so just make sure that the things that you're working with or the people that could become involved with you are really who they say they are, or the opportunities that are presented to you. Don't forget to do your vetting so that you make sure that they are what they're presented as. And Mercury will begin its pre-shadow phase. So this is the time of year here shortly after this new moon. I think it's about the 19th is when we'll start to go into that pre-shadow phase. So, you know, if something isn't already on the table, if you don't have all of the information, if something is presented to you here much further down the road, it becomes a little more complex because we'd have to take into consideration where in your chart Mercury will be going retrograde to know where we're going to see some of the emphasis on communications and agreements and contracts and even verbal and expressed or implied agreements, where we need to watch for those, because it really is more like it's not that Mercury is withdrawing from us and not lending its helpful energy and protection. It's that these same areas that Mercury covers become more emphasized. And you should see I'm a Virgo rising, and so the ruler of my first house is Mercury, and it's already been happening. And that's part of what the Uranus effect is, where Uranus will be helping make the mischief and, to move things forward. And I'm thinking that really what's been going on here has more of a Uranus touch to it. So just keep that in mind, that you want to be excited about what you're moving forward into. But regardless of what time of year it is, and at any time, we should be realistic and exercise the same precautions and same vetting procedures no matter what we do. So the Two of Wands, of course, indicates that there could be another person that comes into your life, or the idea for another project where you could be working on multiple projects at the same time, or you've got your day job and you're really putting emphasis on your passion, your hobby, the thing that you want to develop into a full-blown type of endeavor. So just again, remember that anything that involves more than one party is where you need to pay attention to. We're still coming off of the energy that you've heard astrologers talking about, and anybody who's into this would know that even though the Uranus-Pluto square is waning, in that they're separating and they're approximately a degree apart from exact now, it still has its little hitches in the giddy up. So, we're still seeing some of this emphasis, and this is something that, of course, is probably a little more prominent at the beginning of the week, because Sunday and Monday, the 6th and 7th, is when it will be somewhat peaky. And also considering that the Neptune-Saturn square is also talking to us to make some sense of, or bring closure to, or wrap up a cycle of understanding that is somehow related to 2007. It will help you move forward with more clarity. And even if you take time out to be more introspective, to reflect, ponder on the situations that, if we called it a cycle, we'd be looking back to about 2007 as well. And then the other cycles that will harken back to this Pluto-Uranus square. We just have to think about really everything in terms of how can we complete this? How can we wrap it up? How can we send it off? How can we extract the lessons, the other minor details that we might have missed at the time that we were in the throes of the more challenging aspects, and now you might have this realization of what it is that you need to do now. Focus on finding that. Don't dwell on it for too long, because I think that if any of us get stuck here, we could miss the opportunities that, for example, this new moon in Sagittarius, or solar first house, will bring. We also are experiencing this month the cardinal T square, which will peak up until about the 11th. And the Uranus-Pluto square again is being activated because of Mars. Mars is in Libra at approximately 14 degrees. And for you, that's your solar 11th house. So there could be some lessons or considerations or adjustments that need to be made in order to fully work through the remnants of this astrology. So with that said, just keep that in mind, that the Uranus-Pluto square, and I hate to have to touch on it too much, but I think it's worth exploring in case you do detect any anomalies in your momentum, that even though this is, something that we've been dealing with for the last 3 years or so, that just tells you how intense some of these experiences are. It's not really just like all the aspects the moon is making on its journey, every month. It's much more significant, and the farther out these objects in the celestial are, the more emphasis they have. It actually is more indicative, because it takes so long for these objects to travel their journey, that we're actually experiencing them more consistently, because a lot of these are, of course, obviously generation defining types of aspects. So just keep that in mind, that if you feel a little funny Sunday and Monday, well, just work through it and see what the universe is suggesting to you. What are the conversations in the sky offering to you? What are your body systems telling you? Think about it a little bit. On Tuesday, we have the Hermit card, and the Hermit card is the card of introspection and reflection. It is also a card of taking what you've learned and helping other people grow through it. If you have an opportunity, like a friend asks you for your opinion, of course, when advice is solicited and we agree to give that information, it becomes more validating, in that usually you have a person who's ready to hear whatever it is that you've got to say, and vice versa. Remember, and in my opinion, unless you're clicking on somebody's video, with our own friends and families, those closest to us, our children, grandchildren, nieces, and nephews, even our own siblings and cousins, don't necessarily offer too much information this week without being asked, because there is the element or the danger that for some of you that are more outspoken, somebody could say, well, who asked you? Or, look, I didn't ask you for your input on this. And sometimes we could, be a little sensitized to that, which makes sense. Mercury at 27 Sagittarius squares a North Node in Virgo, which is your solar 10th house. So, at the same time that you could be offering somebody your opinion or your assessment or your take on some situation about their life and career, you could have that one person pipe up and say something sharp or cutting like, well, you're so successful, I suppose we could all learn from you. You know what I mean? Just people will throw things out when they're feeling a little defensive. The sun there will also trine Uranus in Aries, your solar fifth house of those cousins and siblings and romantic relationships, your children, your early home environment, or that which you provide for your children as well. Just keep that in mind. And for those of you that don't have children, these would, of course, relate to your children's projects, if you've inherited them through marriage, like stepkids and such, but also your creative endeavors. And there are plenty of people who, not just because they missed the boat because of age or something, they chose not to have children. And I often get questions like, well, what about me? I never wanted children, or I'm too old now, so that's probably not a potential and I'm not going to be adopting children. Well, then obviously, relates to your family, your siblings, the romantic or the creative. These are all kind of the same energetic imprints that this fifth house will talk about. So just keep that in mind. Also, on Wednesday, we have the Queen of Pentacles in reverse. And so there could be the emphasis of a woman who may be an earth sign, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, or a rising sign like this, or just a person who comes across as very earthy, very natural. And she could be in an industry or represent to you someone who either controls, holds, or otherwise can offer advice, like an accountant, bookkeeper type on expenses and finances. So this person is tied to resources. The issue is obviously that she's in the reverse. And so this is just really where this person could become a little too strict or overbearing with these resources, or you need this person's advice and they're just really not available or not going to make themselves available. Or maybe you asked her for a bunch of free advice and passed your consultation, say with an attorney, a CPA, or somebody authorized to represent you in front of an entity like the Internal Revenue Service, and now this person isn't going to talk until you pay her for her time to sit down. And in the most stringent situations, she could just be somebody who doesn't want to be bothered with giving anybody any advice or personal information. Like if you're a male and you're associated with this woman in a romantic sense, if you're single, not married, then this could be another person coming into the picture. And obviously this is somebody who may not be the best choice, in that she could just be all about the money. And of course she could represent a very feminine male. We don't have to get too gender specific, because I think by now you guys have heard me long enough to have figured out that I try to demonstrate how the gender doesn't have to be taken at face value. But if this is a person that you are married to, she could be going through a situation, an experience where she says, you know what? And I know we used to spend $1,000 on Christmas buying all of your nieces and nephews presents, and we can't afford it this year. And so you may be taking her as being almost like the rain on the parade financially. The sun in Sagittarius will square Chiron in Pisces, your solar fourth house. So she really does have some emphasis here on your material resources, your foundation. As such, somehow she is associated with your home. So this could be your wife, your live-in partner, your roommate, somebody else who could very closely affect the situation. Now, imagine if this is your roommate and there's no romantic relationship. She's just somebody that you've known for a long time and you're comfortable and you've got this really great, chill kind of working relationship. And suddenly she says, and I've got to go because suddenly I'm getting married in Paris. And you're like, oh, crap. That means that I am now going to make the January mortgage or rent payment or lease payment on my own. And imagine the same if she were to be in the guise of your business partner, how that could happen, what it could actually get you to acknowledge that maybe you need to get comfortable enough, or reduce your debt, keep your income more fluid in this kind of an event, where we're not counting chickens before they hatch anymore. And in this case, it really isn't as easy to deal with, but obviously you see that the point is to get you more independent so that you're not relying on anybody else to support you, which, the goal is really freedom, isn't it? And especially for freedom loving Sagittarius, you guys don't really like to be tied down, and you sure as heck don't like to be dependent on somebody else for your finances. That's not something that Sagittarius normally likes to experience. Mercury will enter Capricorn, your solar second house, and obviously Mercury here in this position is trying to get you to create more structure around your finances, and that further solidifies and validates the idea that you need to not be too dependent on anyone else. If it's your clients and your business, that's one thing, but just the same, you need to have a rainy day fund for when something goes wrong, or what if your profits or expenses change significantly in a reporting period. So I'm sure you understand how that would work. Thursday, we've got the Eight of Cups, and this is an indication that you make peace with the part of your life that is going to change here. This is your fresh start, even if you do have to say sayonara, to a situation where you realize that you're not independent enough. If you do depend on somebody else's situation for your stability and for your ultimate psychological health, so that you're not too stressed, so that you're not too hurt if something changes. It's just the remains of the day at the end of the day, right? Where we sort through it and think, what is it that happened? Most of the time, when we take the emotional component out of it, we're able to see that it really isn't personal. Unless somebody just walks up to me and says, I hate you, you're ugly, you suck, and I want no part of you. And I'd be like, well, dude, fine. You don't pay my mortgage payment, so it doesn't really matter there. Mars opposing Uranus, Mars in Libra, again, your solar 11th house, opposing Uranus in Aries, your solar 5th house. There could be for a section of the population, a situation where romantically and socially there's something that isn't jiving, so it could be one way or the other, vice versa. Always remember this, that when we have signs across from each other on the zodiac, there's something of a partnership energy, especially when it's related to Libra. So you may think that you're moving along and that there's going to be some more romantic development with a friend of yours. And then that friend says something like, I'm just your best friend. We hang out, we chill, dude, this is not romantic. And then you're like, what the? And it could be vice versa, where somebody thinks that they had a really romantic thing with you. And you're like, we go bowling on Fridays. And, that's if everybody is going bowling. So there could be the energy here of an adjustment as it relates to needing to look at things, maybe remove, again, the emotional component from it. Venus will enter, Venus in Scorpio, I should say, will trine Neptune and Pisces. So Scorpio being your 12th house, which is very quiet here for you anyway, but it could become a little bit of an issue if you start to romanticize a former relationship that you already ended. I suppose in a kind of fancy guru world, we could say that if you've got a past life association with somebody and you're just sure that you've been soulmates or something groovy, I don't really do that whole thing, because I believe there's plenty of soulmates and plenty of people that we've been matched up with, and they show up in all kinds of different incarnations, right? I'm sure I've had a past life relationship with both my dogs and all 4 of my cats, but with that said, you could be thinking of a romantic idea from the past and even romanticizing it further with rose-colored glasses, which in hindsight sounds like a mirror in a funhouse, right? So just don't get too stuck there, because the trine is a very sweet and flowing energy, but because Neptune in Pisces, your solar 4th house, you could be dreaming about the guy in high school that you dated and you were just sure you guys would end up married. He'd be a sailor. You'd have a pretty little house and a picket fence and a baby with chubby cheeks and a carriage. And so make sure that in this Eight of Cups moment that you're not stunting your development, your personal evolution by getting stuck in the past. Make peace with it. Think about how beautiful it was. I can tell you about a particular boyfriend in high school that was my world at the time, and I just knew even then that it just wasn't going to work because I wasn't ready, and we just didn't. We were too romantic, and yet at the same time, I was recognizing that we probably weren't going to be a good match. I just hadn't pinpointed why. And so, that's the one that I've told you the story about, that later he didn't remember saying something that was hurtful that I remembered. And at the same time, he was sure I'd just, trashed his heart, which, I believe that there could be some truth in both those situations. So use that information, use that energy to move away and forward from the past. And then once in a while, you can daydream while you stir your hot cocoa and think about all the pretty things that are just part of the beautiful flowing feelings that are experienced here in this place, in this terrestrial environment, where we really do sometimes take Neptune a little bit too far and daydream and fantasize. Although, look, daydreams and fantasies about the creative, about writing poetry and music, these are the muse. And at the same time, we know that we can't stay there forever because somebody's got to make money because baby needs a new pair of shoes. So we've got to be able to take those energies and move them forward in a way that is consistent. On Friday, we have the Empress card. And this is fantastic because this is your new moon in Sagittarius. And, if you need to be sure about the hour, check an ephemeris, and there's all kinds of online ephemerides, and you can look for that information. Tons of stuff on the internet that, you can corroborate. Make sure that you're getting it from a good site. And this is not supposed to be in the reverse. I apologize. So the Empress here, let me put her away so as to not confuse you. The Empress here is you full of creativity and you bursting with fruit flavor and energy and optimism and the sense of being bountiful. Just remember to temper that with some healthy optimism. We've got enough planetary influences that are going to temper us anyway, but you guys are so good at seeing, far into the future of what you would really like the future to look like. We just have to temper it with remembering that other people have free will and choice the same as we do, and their vision of the future may not match yours. The goal is to be around people, whether they're your colleagues or your clients or your relationship or your best friend. Find people who together you complement each other, if not support each other, and really benefit the relationship dynamic. But again, remember that everybody's living life one day at a time, just like we all are, and not everybody sees even the distant future the same way. I feel lucky when I wake up the next morning and I'm alive, and then I pinch myself to be sure that I really am. So Mars and Libra here will offer the adjustment energy with the quincunx inconjunct. For those of you that don't recognize my funny little word, I just love saying it, quincunx, quincunx, quincunx. So this quincunx is to Chiron in Pisces. So Mars and Libra could motivate us to either be very passionate, aggressive, or maybe even too over the top with our friends. And then Chiron is saying, hey, look, the crowd is fun and the vibe is great and the group or the posse or tribe is amazing. But really at the end of the day, what matters is your personal stability. So the adjustment here might be for you to remember that even groups of people or throngs of followers are probably good for the ego and good for a moment in time. But at the end of the day, really, where's your self-confidence? Where's your stability? Do you feel good when you spend time alone, or do you have a hard time being alone? Are you with your romantic partner because you love them, or is it because you're afraid of being alone? Just consider these things. Everybody's going to have a different take on it because obviously we're living each very unique lives, but keep that in mind. On Saturday, we have the Three of Cups, and boy, I just really blew it here. The Three of Cups is supposed to be upright. Promise you, promise you. And this is a wonderful energy because, of course, it is, somewhat Neptunian because there could be drink involved. Let's not all go over the top, before the holiday work parties. Somebody's got to photocopy their ass on a copier, or else it just isn't dysfunctional enough. And that's just an old cliche, just a joke, really. But people have done it. So the Three of Cups is a good union of friends together, a group dynamic, a party, a gathering, a birthday. It could be a bridal shower, a baby shower, or the welcome news that a friend or yourself have to announce about a pregnancy. And if that's not what you want to do, of course, use this energy in the creative sense. The Sun in Sagittarius will square Jupiter in Virgo. Again, just be careful to not go too far over the top, to use a healthy dose of realism with your optimistic stew, right? Just, sprinkle a little bit in there to make sure that if somebody's trying to sell you something that you don't realize later, wow, so you could have told me that this was a Ponzi scheme and I would have understood you. So just keep that in mind. I think that Mercury in Capricorn sextiling Neptune and Pisces will again remind you that you need to focus on what is stable and safe for you at the same time, financially as well as emotionally, psychologically, okay? Then on Sunday, we have the Chariot in reverse, and that one really is reversed. So I'll leave it up there. So the Chariot in reverse is talking about a need to very much blend and harmonize your experiences thus far, for this week anyway, right? And so thinking of this as a dose in a moment in time, we just need to make sure that we understand we're starting off the week with a very, very healthy optimism. And I think that you guys are actually going to feel the best, out of everybody. Maybe Scorpio is going to be feeling pretty damn good with Venus there. And boy, is that mysterious and scorpionic. But at the end of the week, when we end with another 2, in essence, that's represented by the Chariot card, we have to keep in mind that there are things that need to be balanced out. I think that the 8 of Cups will provide you with the hint as to what it is that needs to be balanced, or where the adjustment energy is best utilized. And it could just be, again, just the whole theme of balancing the hopeful with the optimistic, and at the same time integrating a pinch of being realistic, throughout it. That shouldn't be enough to quench your curiosity about the future, nor should you let it. But again, being realistic makes a difference between starting a business and saying, this is going to rock because I am totally going to do this whole t-shirt screen printing thing. And even though it's okay, I live in a town of 114 people, and I've been there before, so I actually have experience in this. And you think that that's really going to pay the mortgage, you probably need to work at the restaurant or do something else too to supplement things, because it would be living part of your dream. But at the same time, if you go out and get a bank loan for, $8,000 that you need to buy some t-shirt printing equipment, they're going to want to really see this bottom line. And then if you go with a shady loan that is no different from one of those payday loans, except maybe you got it on an Indian reservation, it could really cause you some problems down the line. So allow Capricorn, Sagittarius to help you. Let the Capricorn help you really make use of your resources, and you'll see that soon enough your optimism is going to turn into really amazing, great, good fun and success.